Please, can we just wait for the microphone?
From the Ukraine and from Moscow. Sorry, hi. Hello, my name is Natalia Martinenko. I'm actually originally from the Ukraine. I'm interested to know that the films that made this small screen films, is it easy to put them on the national television at all in Russia and in Ukraine as well? So many people, not just the people that can come in Moscow physically to your festival can see this film, but people all over Russia can see and learn about these issues. Thank you.
That's more of a challenge. But that's why another reason why we do our festival in a lot of cities of Russia. But some of the films have actually made it to TV. Some of the Russian films have been on TV. So we're very happy about that. But another thing that we don't do, just because we never have enough time, is we don't go and promote the films. People have told us, why don't you go out there? Just because it's a big job to promote the films. And then most filmmakers would, of course, want a fee to show their films. And so that would be, and years ago they wouldn't pay. We tried this a couple of years, this was about 6 years back, and none of the TV stations would pay. They said, we don't have a budget to pay for documentary films. Now I think there is more funding for documentary films, and we do see more documentary films. I mean, we don't only have documentary films, but those are the ones that most of the filmmakers are more willing to have shown on TV. So it's a lot of work to get them to TV, but some of them have shown.
Okay, our tourist translator has just got out for a moment, so I will step in for the translation role for that.
Мы показывали этот фильм на местном телевидении в городе Конотопе в Сумской области, то есть организация местная.
Okay, so the films that our tour showed at the end have been shown on local television, so in Sumy region of Ukraine.
Это город 100 тысяч человек населения.
So which would reach 100,000 people.
I just want to add something. What I didn't say is that there's a cable TV station in St. Petersburg, and they actually agreed to show many of the films. And then when years ago, we had a partnership with a group in Abkhazia, and they showed all of the films. And we said, but wait a minute, you need to get the rights to show these films. And they said, that's okay, no one will ever know. But they managed because they didn't have anything else to show apparently, and they showed all of the films. It was amazing.
Jose, please.
Yes, for Artur, you mentioned that you had some trouble recruiting people to appear on the show My Secret Success. On My Recipe for Success. I was wondering if you could talk about what reasons they gave.
Очень хороший вопрос.
It's a very good question.
Аналогичная ситуация, о которой говорила коллега с России, Ирина. О чем говорила Ирина, люди боялись говорить о том, что они чего-то достигли позитивно.
So the same, similar reasons to what Irina was talking about earlier, many people felt that they hadn't achieved anything positive to talk about.
И в основном это страх того, что люди узнают обо мне.
And in general it was a fear that other people would find out or pay attention to them.
Так как в основном это были связаны люди до 25-30 лет.
So generally people who were 25, up to 25, 30 years of age.
Они считали, что лучше не привлекать к себе внимание вообще.
And they felt it was best not to draw attention to themselves.
Можно я добавлю? Это очень глубокая проблема. Дело в том, что в России, я полагаю, как и на Украине, не тяжело дышать, в России, как и на Украине, люди очень боятся зависти.
So as in Russia, in both Russia and Ukraine, people are worried about envy.
Вы не можете себе представить, как меня предостерегали от написания моей книги.
So for example, the reaction that people gave when Irina published her own book, her own autobiography.
И надо сказать, что было много людей, которые мне позавидовали. Потому что мне писали, что если бы у нас были деньги, мы бы тоже не против поболеть.
And many people were jealous of the success the book that Irina had written, thinking it was kind of a question of if they had money, they would also be able to do it.
Мне, конечно, хотелось им написать, что ну поболейте, попробуйте, я вам заплачу.
With a sense of irony, Irina suggested that, okay, get ill yourself, get disabled yourself, and I'll pay you to write a book.
Бороться только просвещение.
And the way to, Jose asked how can that be fought? What can be done to tackle those types of attitudes and approach? And it's just raising awareness.
Вообще, поскольку в стране нет уважения к отдельной личности, исторически, это очень большая проблема. Зачем ты высунулся? Я последняя буква в алфавите. Твое мнение никого не интересует, это обычная проблема.
Okay, and Irina talked about the general lack of, cultural respect for individual stories and individuality as maybe one potential issue. Okay, can we return to questions for the panel now?
Can I just make a very brief comment and then I've got a question. My name's Stephen Lacey. I was lucky enough to have a film featured at the festival, and I'd just like to say it was one of the most humbling, life-changing experiences of my life. As you probably noticed, I've got a disability, and it's kind of made me want to go to Russia, and every time I go, I see myself as constantly challenging stereotypes, especially when I'm dancing in clubs and swimming and doing things. So I feel very humble. The question I've got is just really about the Paralympics, whether that changed perceptions in Russia in any way, shape or form, and what you think Sochi will bring with so much investment going on, and will there be anything around disability with the Sochi?
I think it's already changing perceptions of disability. I mean, some of it might be negative in that it's building the superhero. People are looking at these athletes, and of course everybody's not a super athlete, but even when, because it started with Vancouver, and then with after the London Games, because the athletes did so well at the Games, and there was a lot of media coverage. And I think I saw some very good media coverage too, where they didn't just showcase the athlete, but they actually talked to the athlete, and they interviewed the athlete, and they showed the athlete's family members. And I very clearly remember what one of the athletes said when they asked him, well, why did you become an athlete? He said, I had nothing else to do. I mean, so he became an athlete because otherwise he would have been stuck at home. So, and this was his, opportunity to do something. So I think that we've seen changes, and people talking about it. I mean, after the Games, people would talk to me all the time. People knew that I did disability. My neighbors would ask me questions. So I think that because they were on TV and there is talk about it, occasionally we do hear, people know that there is going to be a Paralympic Games in addition to the Olympic Games. People are thinking about it. For example, a hotel. I mean, this is business, but there's a hotel that we often do our trainings at, and the hotel director has just been driving us crazy because he wants to make sure his hotel is going to be accessible enough. He's funny because he doesn't want the rooms to be so accessible so they look accessible. He doesn't want them to look accessible so that people think that they're in a room for people with disabilities. But he wants them to be accessible because they're thinking that all of these people with disabilities are going to be coming to Moscow. So people are thinking about it. I don't know about Sochi. That's another issue because I think that the city is going to become accessible. I mean, I think it's definitely going to have a change. It's going to have an impact. Anyway, because so many people with disabilities are going to be coming through Moscow, coming to Russia, and everyone will have to deal with it. And they're already preparing, but I don't think they're going to be as prepared as they should be. But it'll be a learning experience. Big issue in Russia. And then the cochlear implants too. That's an issue as well.
Okay, I think you will agree that our panel has done a wonderful job of easing us into Friday evening and the weekend. There's nothing better than watching films to round off a busy week. So I think we need to thank our tour, Claire and Denise, for that. You've been a very active audience, and I think Nicola would like to round off today's event with some final comments and closing words from the Bear Trust.
Well, I don't intend to be too much of a barrier between Friday night and you getting on with enjoying the weekend, so I will make this final session quite quick. I was talking in the tea break to one of our delegates who told me that he considered himself to be something of an expert on Russia and Eastern Europe, that he spent most of his time studying what was happening there. But he felt that in the morning so far, he had learned something new from each speaker. And as he said himself, that was really saying something. And that was just before the tea break, and I echo that. 3 speakers that have followed since have reinforced that. I've certainly learned a great deal that I didn't know. We're very fortunate, thanks to Sealbass's support, to have you all in the same room at the same time. And I think we should recognise that this has involved some quite strenuous travel for our speakers and for many of the delegates too. And in fact, Irina, in your case, I know you have made and will still be making appearances to speak in London this week, which I think has involved a phenomenal feat of stamina as well. So thank you very much, and many thanks to our speakers who have been of the most outstanding quality and have given us some incredible insights into this subject. I'd like to just mention a few points that struck me. This is inevitably a slightly personal selection. I'm not even going to attempt to make a sort of summary or a balanced assessment of what we've heard today. But there was just too much material of great richness, absolutely fascinating. But I was particularly struck by what's revealed by a historical survey of changing depictions of disability in the arts, and how interesting the analysis of contemporary arts is. In particular, I was struck by this difference in approach between the genders and the tendency of female writers to go for a more realistic depiction, male writers perhaps to echo some of the earlier ideas of otherworldliness. It's interesting to see that continuing to emerge. I was also very struck by how many references, in implicit or explicit the word, to the question of perspective. Whose perspective is involved here? And in particular, I think the key thing here for me was the way that disabled people are expressing themselves through art. The way this is helping to break down stigmas and old taboos. And in connection with that, the power of film and the cinema, and perhaps a slight question mark over whether television is yet exercising the same power, possibly regional, local television, cable networks, but maybe not yet in the mainstream so much. Perhaps this reflects the ownership structures, the management of TV stations. That question I'd perhaps like to explore more in the future. I was also very interested in the more recent developments of the blurring of art and reality by disabled actors playing the role of disabled people, and the sort of the sort of general evolution from kind of depiction of unreality through to an almost hyper reality. I think this has been described very well this afternoon. I felt perhaps, now this, again, you can correct me if you think I've got hold of the wrong end of the stick, but is there a slight tension, a slight ambiguity between whether we are describing, celebrating or promoting the idea of a different world, or on the contrary, whether we are celebrating and promoting the idea of disabled people's achievement of normality, whatever that means, or progress towards normality. I felt there was some ambiguity there. The other point that struck me was the question of whether artists, visual artists and writers, to what extent they are reflecting attitudes or challenging and ultimately changing them. And what I had not realised until today was how many contemporary writers in particular are also activists. I felt there was agreement that there has indeed been a huge advance in awareness, both in the arts and the different of these evolution of attempts to depict or portray disability, but also in society itself. And Irina, I think you mentioned the phenomenal rise in volunteering in just the last 5 years, very recent change. But I think the conclusion, I think as Oliver said, it's sort of fair to conclude that in general awareness is still running ahead of changes in the social and physical fabric of Russia and Eastern Europe, which of course means that there is still a great deal for NGOs to do, and of course for BEAR to continue to do what we can to help them. I should probably mention here that of course Arta's project in Ukraine was supported by BEAR. If I could just jump very quickly to an administrative point, in your packs you have evaluation forms, and we would be very grateful if you would take the trouble to fill them in, either today, before you go, or post them back. We find these incredibly helpful for designing future events. And you don't just have to say nice things. We particularly appreciate constructive criticisms and suggestions that will help us to design and improve further events. And speaking for BEAR as a BEAR trustee, an event like this, we benefit a lot from a forum like this. We are primarily a networking organisation. And I hope that the noise in the tea break was a reflection of the contacts being made and interesting conversations being begun. And so I should say now, could I please invite you all to stay on for tea if you have time after this. There will be tea and coffee outside. Do please stay and carry on the conversations. And if you have time, do take a look at the artworks we have here. As Robert mentioned earlier, these are the work of people with mental disabilities, and any of them that you buy, all the proceeds will go to an NGO that helps people with mental disability. The other way in which we benefit from an afternoon like this is that this has increased the body of knowledge that we draw on to design our annual conference, which will take place in November, or future annual conferences, and our small grant scheme. Some of you may know, some may not, that each year we aim to give between £30,000 and £40,000 in total in micro grants to small NGOs in Russia and East Europe. To do this, we do depend on donations. We don't receive public funding. Today's event is free, thanks to Sealbass, but we're very happy for you to empty the contents of your wallets into the pot by the teapot, if you wish. But even more importantly, if you would like to consider becoming a friend of BEAR and joining our Friends scheme, please have a word with Anne Lewis afterwards, and there is a leaflet about this in your pack. It only costs £30 a year, less for students, I should say. and I can assure you that these modest amounts of money are very well spent. Most of Bear's work is done by its trustees and volunteers, and we have very low administrative overheads and very tight control of our money. So all your contributions will be put to very good use. So that's the end of my plug for Bear. I should stop there because, among other things, I think I'm going away with a rather long reading list, courtesy of Oliver, and a whole list of films that would be very nice to get hold of and see. Dream for a box set addict like me. So if I could just say a final thanks to our organisers and volunteers, to our two chairmen, Robert and Michael, and of course to our excellent speakers. Thank you very much.